The Panther killers. Mismatch between the M4 Sherman and the Panzer V Panther. They were told the Panther was invincible. They were wrong. Discover how outgunned American farm boys pulled off history's greatest tank ambush. Subscribe now to witness the grit of Arracourt.
The Americans had lost only 8 of their own. The Germans blamed the fog and the French terrain. They could not understand how they had been defeated. They believed the better tank always won the fight. But the Americans were not fighting a fair duel. They fought as a team of combined military arms. Infantry spotted targets while artillery broke the German lines. Airplanes attacked the supply trucks from the high clouds. This was the doctrine that Tiger Jack would perfected. On September 20th, the fog finally began to lift. Major Charles Carpenter looked down from his small plane. He was an artillery spotter in a fabric aircraft. His plane was a Piper Cub with no weapons. Carpenter was tired of just watching the war below. He had mounted 6 bazookas to his wing struts. People called his small plane Rosie the Rocketeer, now. He saw a company of Panthers moving toward Arracourt. He did not call for the heavy artillery fire. He dove his tiny plane at the German tanks. The little engine screamed at 90 miles per hour. German machine guns filled the air with tracer fire. Carpenter ignored the lead and fired his wing rockets. A Panther burst into flames from a top hit. He climbed back up and dove again and again. The Germans were terrified by the tiny fabric plane. They had never seen an airplane fire infantry rockets. Carpenter destroyed 6 tanks with his modified scout plane. He proved that ingenuity was better than heavy steel. By the end of the month, Arracourt was won. 200 German tanks were destroyed or left behind. The American farm boys had beaten the Panthers' bite. They proved that the crew matters more than technology. The inferior Sherman had won the greatest tank battle. The training of the 4th Armored had saved France. History remembers the machine, but men win the war. On September 19, the main German assault finally began. The 113th Panzer Brigade moved through the thick fog. Colonel von Seckendorf ordered his heavy Panthers to advance. He believed his superior armor would sweep the Americans. The fog was a shroud that blinded both sides. But the Germans had no scouts to lead them. They moved forward blindly into a landscape they feared. The Americans had the eyes of the cavalry scouts. Colonel Clark knew exactly where the Germans were moving. The Germans stumbled into an ambush they never saw. Captain William Dwight saw movement near the command post. He saw Panthers heading straight for the American headquarters. Dwight did not wait for orders to save himself. He grabbed a platoon of M18 Hellcat tank destroyers. The Hellcat was the fastest tracked vehicle in existence. It had no armor, but it was incredibly quick. A single Panther shell would blow it to pieces. Dwight fought a running battle through the French farms. His crews used speed to dodge between the buildings. They fired at the thin side armor of Panthers. 9 German tanks were left burning in the mud. Dwight held the line until the heavy reinforcements arrived. Meanwhile, Company C was waiting near the village Leasy. Lamerson had hidden his tanks behind a low ridge. Only their turrets were visible to the German line. When the Panthers emerged, they were 75 meters away. At that range, the Sherman's gun became a killer. The lead Panther died before it saw the ridge. The second tried to turn but exposed its rear. The Sherman crew destroyed it with a single shot. The German column was trapped in a deadly maze. The fog and smoke made the chaos much worse. American crews executed maneuvers they had practiced for years. Each commander knew exactly what his wingman was doing. The Germans had no coordination in the white mist. They fired on each other in the heavy confusion. By noon, 43 German tanks lay ruined and burning. Its transmission failed if the driver was not careful. The final drives wore out under any rough treatment. Experienced crews knew how to baby the delicate parts. These new crews knew nothing of their tank's limits. Mechanical failures were as deadly as American anti-tank fire. Panthers broke down before they even reached the line. Opposing them was Combat Command A of 4th Armored. They were led by Colonel Bruce Clark, a problem solver. Clark had only 45 tanks to face the Germans. But his men had been fighting together since Normandy. They had trained for 700 days before France. Major General Tiger Jack Wood had forged them well. He demanded high standards and pushed his men hard. Wood believed in speed and leading from the front. He wanted tank commanders who could think for themselves. He wanted gunners who could hit targets without orders. The Americans operated as a single, cohesive fighting team. The Germans were strangers operating under a rigid command. This difference in training would prove to be decisive. The first signs of trouble appeared on September 14. Company A entered the village square of Valhay cautiously. Sergeant Joseph Sadowski led the second tank in line. A German 88 fired from less than 20 yards. The round struck home and the Sherman burst into flame. Chaos erupted as German infantry opened fire from windows. Sadowski ordered his crew to get out and hide. Then he realized his bow gunner was still trapped. He ran back through a hail of German lead. Sadowski climbed onto the hull of his burning tank. He tried to pry the hatch open with bare hands. He died there, still reaching for his trapped comrade. His sacrifice inspired his men to press the attack. They destroyed the German guns and took the town. It proved that American crews were more than machines. They were brothers who would die for each other. That bond cannot be built in 2 weeks' time. The morning fog rolled heavy across the French village. Captain Richard Lamerson sat high in his steel turret. He listened to the low rumble of German engines. The sound was unmistakable and it was getting closer. Lamerson commanded a company of American M4 Sherman tanks. They were dug into the ridge near Bézanges-la-Petite. Only their turrets showed above the crest of the hill. Somewhere in that mist, the German Panthers were advancing. Visibility had dropped to less than 100 meters. On paper, the coming battle should have been a slaughter. The Panther was a predator designed to kill other tanks. Its front armor was nearly 140 millimeters thick. It carried a high-velocity gun that killed from distance. A Panther could destroy a Sherman from 2 kilometers away. The Sherman's gun could not penetrate a Panther.